All right, everyone. The state of Utah is moving to decriminalize polygamy. I don't think to legalize it and enshrine it in doctrine so much as just to say, if people are living a polygamous lifestyle, we're not going to enforce any ordinance or rule against it. I support this, actually, but I'd like to point out the hypocrisy and the religious underlying basis in the state of Utah for this out in Mitt Romney fantasy land. Mormonism preaches polygamy. Now, if you try to debate a modern-day Mormon on this from the actual LDS, they'll deny this. They'll point to the Book of Mormon and ask you to tell them where the polygamy is, outside of the spiritual post-death sort of thing. Elohim has multiple wives. Jesus had multiple wives. It preaches that you can have multiple lives in the hereafter. Not sure about what the women are supposed to do. I guess they develop some bisexuality at some point. That's, I guess, holy because they're spirits, so they can't sin anymore. But if you look at the early editions of the Book of Mormon, the polygamy's there. Not only is it encoded as being tolerated, it's actually said to be a good thing. In fact, spiritually necessary. The truth is that what happened is this. Joseph Smith was a reasonably talented con man. He would douse, which is snake oil for most intents and purposes, I'd say. He would use confederates, which is what they're called, to try to convince communities that he could find treasure on their property or whatever. What he would do is he would show up beforehand. He'd have some farmer or something. He'd approach him and say, hey, how would you like to make quite a bit of money? Oh, yeah, I'd love to make some money. He would go to the bar and find the unsavory types who'd be willing to do this and then probably get him a few drinks, get him sauced, get him to agree to this. He'd go in, bury a little treasure on their property. Then he'd go to the town and tell people, hey, I can do this. I've got this special dowsing power. I can find gold. Oh, yeah, Joe over there has graciously volunteered. I'll even do it for free. He finds this little, sum of money or gold or whatever. Everyone comes along, and says, oh, I want to know what treasure's on my property. Yes, but I can only do it once per day. And then he'd ride out of town at night after paying off the original dude. He was also a window watcher, it was claimed. That is, that he would, in a perverted fashion, watch young women undressing. Or old women, it's not entirely clear. Who knows what he was into. Polygamy was one thing he was. Mormonism is fake. It's a sci-fi based sort of movement. It's sort of like Scientology. I refuse to give it any further respect because it's so self-evidently and obviously wrong. It's even beyond sort of the ancient mythology cult movements. It's more like, you've got this book that claims the Native Americans, around the time Jesus shows up, no less, are riding horses around before the Spaniards bring horses for the first time to North America. The Garden of Eden is in, Jackson, Mississippi or something, and not actually in the Middle East. And weird things like that. They're riding elephants around, and Joseph Smith, by the way, here's the most damning thing against the Book of Mormon, first edition, second edition, whatever, is actually something nobody else ever talks about, and that's if Joseph Smith was translating an ancient Hebrew document using the magical rocks that the archangel Raphael, I believe, if I remember correctly, gives him. Why did he translate it into Old English, like King James Version English, instead of into his own modern-day tongue? Why did he translate it into Old English with all of these and thous and stuff that was totally vestigial? It's because he wasn't translating a document. He essentially wanted it to be saleable, and so he put it in Old English to make it look more authentic. Because the Rubish farmers and so forth he was trying to con, it wouldn't want it in modern-day English. They wouldn't have accepted it as a religious document. They were used to reading the Bible in Old English. Half of them were illiterate. That's what they were used to, so it helped with the con. It made it look more authentic. Though there are so many modern-day grimoires that do the same thing. Oh, this demon came down and deliverest to me this sacred, desecrating magical ritual, and it's all with the these and thous, like sitting there chuckling. Or they have like Old English-style characters all throughout the text for no reason. I stylize my covers that way for aesthetic effect, but there's no Old English lettering and crazy shit like that in the documents themselves because there's no point to it. Modernization is not a bad thing. Utah is moving to decriminalize polygamy because of the plurality of Mormons within Utah. That's what this is about. Because the fundamentalist movements that are technically heretical to the LDS still preach that because they understand that the initial Book of Mormon praised the idea of polygamy and indeed made it a spiritual necessity. It said it was a good thing to be fruitful and multiply, and if a dude could get 3-4 women to put up with him, it was considered a good thing. It was considered positive. Mormonism is the Americanization of pseudo-Christianity, and nothing more. It's a completely Americana sci-fi invention of the 19th century. Joseph Smith would later get killed for his various crimes and heresies by an angry mob that would shoot him in a jail cell, if I remember correctly. I'd love to debate some Mormon apologists because they never want to point that out. It's sort of like, what the hell is it, the Watchtower, the Jehovah's Witnesses initially were a doomsday cult, and they made 4 or 5 different failed predictions before finally giving that shtick up and becoming more corporatized and real. They put on suits instead of sackcloth, and they got into the boardroom and said, well, this isn't the way forward if we want this organization to grow and for us to get lots and lots of cash. Mormons did the same thing, except they did it in the 1800s. They didn't wait until the middle of the 20th century to do so, to sell out. Basically, Joseph Smith is still, relatively warm in his shallow fucking grave, and they all gathered around, the elders of this religious movement, and decided, well, we're going to rewrite the Book of Mormon. There are some things in here that we're revising it. The angel told us Joseph Smith wasn't completely right. And I can only think of the old tale from, I think it was the Sahih Muslim, if I remember correctly, within Islam, sort of the extra canonical works, where they mentioned something about Aisha's goat actually chewing up a few of the original Quranic pages. Whoops. And then they were lost to time. And I'm thinking to myself, the logical stretching that goes on in some of these cases is funny. That being said, again, I do believe that it should be decriminalized. The idea that the government has the right, even if it's to suppress weird religious stuff, the idea that the government fundamentally has any right or responsibility or any legitimate reason to interfere with people's consensual adult interactions in this way is ludicrous. Because people can get together and have a sex party. They can cohabit in multiple arrangements of any kind they want. 2 dudes and 5 women. 7 women and 1 dude. 5 dudes. 5 guys in a row. They can do all of these things. The government can't do anything about it. Any law against it is a blue, unenforceable law anyway, as it should be. There's nothing to be done about it. Government should stick to doing things that they're actually capable of following through with some degree of efficiency without tyranny. That's what it boils down to. That's why there shouldn't be a drug war. There shouldn't be any form of censorship of political or other so-called obscene or taboo speech. There shouldn't be a bunch of world policing around the world with unwinnable conflicts. We should call them wars, but war is never declared anymore. These things are dumb, and they're a misuse of government power. They extend the meaning of government beyond the initial. The initial is to increase efficiency, to prevent victimization and abuse, and to oversee an orderly sort of society in which the government can be as minimal as possible while maintaining that framework. That's a proper government. The idea that the government should come in and tell you what kind of civil marriage arrangements for contractual purposes you can have, should you choose to want something that's considered aberrant or taboo by the population, that's just a misuse of power. It's sort of like an extension of the idea of democracy. It's the tyranny of the majority. Well, the average American person doesn't want homosexuals to marry, so by golly, we're not going to let them marry. Well, that's what happens when you have sloganeering-style political campaigns. When you get past the civic framework of maybe the more enlightened eras several hundred years ago, and then you get into the fire and brimstone era, a lot of that unfortunately went away. We need a restoration of the late 1700s mentality in the United States. That'd fix our problems. People should leave each other the hell alone, do what they want. But let's call this out as what it is. It's religious pandering. That's exactly what it is. It's for Mormonism. Because Mormonism in the authentic, original, doctrinal sense, if you don't twist yourself in knots to excuse the Latter-day Saints elders and their stupid opinions, it preaches polygamy. In fact, it almost mandates polygamy. The fact that there's no polygamy going on is keeping people from populating the stars beyond Kolob with their magical spirit children and having endless celestial sex. There's a good Mormon cartoon actually on YouTube that sort of explains the sort of freaky underpinnings of some of the beliefs there. Lucifer and Jesus being brothers and so forth. It's quite fun. That's about all. Peace out.